Welcome to the Shining a Light on Workplace Bullying podcast with Eylem and Norun. We are two career coaches with more than 20 years of corporate experience, and we have both gone through painful bullying experiences at work. This led us to study the dynamics of workplace bullying in depth. So the goal of this podcast is to shine a light on workplace bullying, to create awareness and break the taboos, learn how to master bullying situations, and look at how to prevent it, both from an individual and a company perspective. In this episode, we will focus on our own bullying experiences and how it has shaped and transformed us.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. Our first podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
About not such a nice topic, right? But a
Yeah.
very, very important topic for both of us and for many, many women and men out there who will be listening to us.
Yeah, I think it's also what we talked about. It's kind of a taboo topic still. So I think that's one of the reasons why we want to shine a light on it. And hopefully through our experiences and what we learned about this topic, be able to also help others who are having such experiences and don't know what's happening to them or where to go or how to find help.
Yeah, exactly. As you mentioned, this is still a taboo topic within the corporate life. And also people who are experiencing it, like we did, right, are suffering in silence. And as we discussed, one of the goals of this podcast is to really shine a light on the workplace bullying, but also to actually send a message out to the world to say that they are not alone, right? We were suffering in silence. They are eventually suffering in silence, but now they should not feel lonely. So at least we are here to listen to them, to share our experiences. And with that, eventually they will be inspired and motivated to share their experiences with us.
Yeah, that's what we really hope, that people will also come forward and share their experiences, because that's really what's going to make this podcast so much richer than just us talking about our experiences and what we learn. And then one thing I want to pick up as well, you said like suffering. Yeah, they're suffering in silence like we did. And I remember back on that time as well, I was just suffering and I didn't really even maybe understand that it was bullying, or it's because it's such a topic where you are often being so I don't know if you know the word gaslighted, to think that you're actually not being bullied. So I think that's also a big issue for a lot of people. They're just suffering and they don't know really what's going on. And at least my experience was that HR did not really have much knowledge about this topic. So when I tried to say that it was mobbing or something, it was just like, no, this is not mobbing. And then you're like, okay, so what is it then? And that's also suffering when you don't really know what's going on.
Exactly. So, I mean, I made very similar experiences, but before sharing our experiences, let's share with our audience how we met.
Yes.
How did we meet actually, Norun?
Yeah. It's so funny because it's actually because of this topic that we met, right? And because I published an article on you have this discussion about mental health and everybody's talking about depression and anxiety and all that stuff, which is of course really important. But I always ask myself the question, like, so what about bullies? I mean, don't they have a mental health issue, and aren't they like often the reason why people are suffering from so-called mental health issues in the workplace? So I shared some thoughts on that in an article, which was also published on LinkedIn, and I think that's how you you found, then you came with a very insightful and thoughtful comment to that article. And that's how we just started, right? Maybe you tell how you found my article.
Yeah, I mean, we were not connected, and I think someone had liked your article and it appeared on my screen. And when I read it, I said, wow, it resonated so much with me, with what I have been going through in the past. And so I did a comment, I shared a comment, and then so we met online, and we haven't met face to face yet. This is still in the planning, but we are at least in the same country now.
Yes.
And I think since we both shared the similar experiences and have gone through similar challenges, we decided that we share that with a bigger audience, and we don't want to keep it any longer for us, but also inspire and motivate others to share their experiences. So coming back to what you were sharing, your experiences. So when did you realize? What was your bullying experience to start with? So how did you experience the bullying, and when did you realize it is a bullying behavior? So when did you give it a name?
Good question. I kind of, as I said, I kind of thought it was some kind of mobbing when it was happening. But then when I tried to bring that up I remember somebody in HR at the time, they seemed to kind of deny that, or that was such a extreme term kind of to use and had to be used very carefully, or I don't know, it was a bit strange. So I think I kind of had the idea then, but for me it was I knew that something was wrong. I knew that it was not right what was happening, and it was. I mean, the biggest thing that it taught me really was that this type of people exist. In the beginning, I didn't think. I think there was. In the beginning, I thought it was something with me. Then I realized that everybody were having the same issue in my team, so it wasn't just me. Then I tried to address it, and so when did I actually put the name bullying on it? I don't know. It was really quite much later in the process, like maybe even many years after it had happened.
And bullying, as we know, has different assets, right? Like there are different ways how bullying is happening. For example, there is bullying where your work, the quality of your work is targeted, right? There is bullying where your personality is targeted. For example, there is some gossiping going on behind your back, or your work is being criticized, or you're being blamed in front of others with no reason. So what happened? I mean, what was your experiences?
I think I probably experienced a little bit of all of that, but felt that it was very much, especially when it was regard to my work, that it was fabricated, or trying to make my work look bad. Sorry. In my case, it was my boss. So then, it's a hierarchy level above. It's sometimes who decides if your work is okay or not. Like that person actually has a lot of power to pretend, at least, that there is a problem with the work, and also. Yeah, so I think it was on all the levels, but mainly I was also being sidelined, and so my input was maybe not appreciated. My thoughts, when there were things which it was also me who did not agree with what I was being told to do, because I felt like I was being manipulated into doing things which was unethical, not in a like what do you say, like unethical in the sense that it would be, you know, something that's illegal, but like how to treat other people, especially how to treat other people that we were working with, which were not part of our organization. And it was, yeah, ways I was somebody was trying to manipulate me to maybe behave in a way that I would never behave. So that, I think, was one point which was where I reacted, and yeah.
And we know, right, according to the American Psychological Association, the bullies bully with a purpose, right? They want you to be out of the work environment, and there are different reasons for that. And what we also know based on our research and education is that 80% of the bullies are the direct line managers and 20% are the peers, right? And in your case, it was your direct manager who was within the corporate life who had a higher power or more power than you. So how did you feel during the bullying experiences, and what did you do about it?
So I think in the very beginning, I didn't really understand what was going on. I just felt like something was wrong, and I thought it was the problem with me, as I said. But then when I realized that everybody else were having exactly the same problems, because we happened to be a small team and we were communicating, and when I realized that, hey, no, this is actually everyone, then I felt like, okay, we probably need to do something about it, because it was also inefficient the way we were working. It was very strong micromanagement, which in the end felt like a team of 3 people could only do the job of 1 person, because if everything has to be heavily micromanaged, you don't even get to do that much. So, and it was of course not very motivating to work like that. So there were many things like that, and I tried to address it, because I was the most senior person in the team in a way, not in the sense of like we had different titles, but I had been longest in the company, and I thought I'd try to address it with this person, thinking that she would be reasonable about it and wanting to change, and I always paid attention that I only addressed issues that I knew that we all had issues with. But once you start addressing it, if it's this kind of bullying personality, I think one thing that I learned is that they can't take criticism. So when you try to address it, they will immediately turn it around and make it the issue with the person who tries to address it, which happened with me. So yeah, no, lots of it's so much to talk about there, and I'm sure in our like in our podcast we will at least that's how I started addressing it, and then everything just got worse and worse, and it became also more, it wasn't maybe mobbing in the beginning, it was more just a very difficult management style to work with, and we tried to kind of educate her, but I guess that's one of the things you learn also with bully personalities, you cannot educate them. So, but I'm now curious to hear a little bit more about you as well.
Yes, I mean, but before that, you mentioned it was a she, because it was a female manager. So in my cases, there were 2 male managers, which means the bullies can be male or female.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, my experience, actually, I was bullied twice in my career, and in my cases, it was, male managers. The first time, actually, it took 3 years. So it lasted for 3 years, and during the second time, it lasted about 1 year. So and with the first time, in the beginning, I didn't realize that this was bullying. Really, I didn't know what was going on, because I consider I always considered myself as a very clear communicator and very empathetic communicator. And so this was my approach with my manager at that time as well. But over the time, I was actually shouted in front of my team members. I was leading a team. I was criticized. I was micromanaged a lot. So every email that I was sending out was checked before I could send it out. I was excluded from meetings, from chain of communications, from lunch appointments. I was not allowed to meet with head of other departments, etc., etc. So there were things going on where I was thinking, what's going on? Because before, my manager had joined after me. So before, everything was, for me, just part of daily business life. And since I was an open communicator and high in empathy, I was like, oh, let's go for lunch and discuss why this is happening. Let's have a coffee together so that I understand why you have blamed me in front of others, etc., etc. And every time the feedback or the response I got was, it's your perception. You're making up things.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is the best definition of gaslighting, this word gaslighting that I used before. They try to, you start doubting your own reality.
Exactly. And of course, and then you start thinking, is it me? Is it me? Am I doing things? Am I making up things? Am I putting things together? So, so this was the first year. And then, of course, I started doing some researches. And when I found out during the second year, it was bullying, mobbing, I started to reach out to other powerful leaders within the companies to get some advice. And the advice I got was like, oh, try to find a way to cope with him. Try not to shine too much. Try to actually reword your communication style. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So, and then even that didn't help. And it became even worse. Like before the meetings that I was allowed to go, I was asked, for example, not to wear high heels or not to handshake with the leaders, or not to keep the door of my office open, right? Like to close the door of my office. And then when this type of things happen, I said, okay, now it's time to go to HR to get some advice from them, to get some support, because where else can you go, right? As an employee within a corporate life. So, and the same happened there. They were like, oh, don't you think you're too emotional? Don't take it so emotional. Oh, we know it can be a conflict, so we can send you to conflict management trainings. Think twice before you send out an email. Think twice before you say something. So I was like, oh my God, it's again me that is, doing things incorrectly. And then, of course, what's started to happen was like my level of stress had increased. The level of anxiety had increased, because every time my manager was calling me to his office, I was like, oh, what is he going to tell me again? What did I do wrong? And then he was like, oh, Eylem, in that one email, you forgot to put a comma. And I was like, oh my God. Oh, next time, Eylem, be even more careful. Don't forget the comma, right? So, but then in the end, after 3 years, I got sick. I got mentally sick. And one day I opened my eyes and I couldn't move my body. So I moved into really mental sickness, but also my body didn't want to go to that work environment. And then, of course, so I called HR and I asked for advice, and they told me, go and get fixed. I was like, what? Go and get fixed? What do you mean? Am I a coffee machine? Am I broken? It's like, yeah, you need to get some psychological treatment, take them, we pay it, and then you come back when you're fixed. And
It's
I was like,
incredible, yeah.
yeah,
How one-sided. I mean, I think because the hierarchy is like the best place for these people to hide, and they very often in companies, like the one who's higher in the hierarchy gets like the what do you say, like they think that all they do is right and all the people below are doing are wrong, and they have to believe the one at the top of the highest in the hierarchy. And yeah, that's really a heavy experience that you had. I mean, it took you as
yeah,
far as not being able to move your body. I mean, it just shows, you know, how unhealthy it is to be in
yes,
such an environment. And that's
yes.
why, you know, I talked about they are often the cause of mental health issues in other people, and even in your case, like a complete burnout, right?
Yes.
And this is very much, I think it is one indicator when you have like an environment where everybody are like tiptoeing around the person, because you have to all the time, you have to question everything you do before you do it, like what is this going to be the reaction from this person. Then I think that's quite a good indicator that maybe you're dealing with such a bully personality. So
Yeah.
that's something people can think about, you know, in their own cases.
Yeah, and we both made the experience, and we see it on a daily basis that those type of behaviors are well tolerated within the corporate life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, later on we will be able to share also how our listeners can find out this type of behaviors, and also how they can find out actually and recognize the bullies and their bullying behaviors, right? I mean, that's something that we can later on share also with our audience. So Norun, I mean, yes, these are, you know, negative experiences we made, but these have transformed us, and this is also why and how we are here today. So can you share how this negative experience helped you or impacted you positively and transformed you?
Yeah, I mean, although I usually say that although this was like the worst experience, probably the worst experience in my life, it's also, I wouldn't be without it. I mean, all the things I learned from that, and I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be able to, like, I'm now working as a coach, and I must say, actually, many of the clients who come to me, they start telling stories like that, and I can immediately help them identify that they are, or when people start telling me stories, I hear immediately now that, here is maybe somebody you need to pay a bit attention. I know all the signs. Before I didn't. I was completely naive. I had not really met people like this before in my life. I didn't really think they existed. And I think my whole experience lasted for a couple of years, really bad the last year or something. And it wasn't actually until the really end of that time that I realized that, oh, this person is not going to change. They don't see that they're not, you know, they don't have the same ability to question their own behavior as most people would have. And they're not open to doing that. And so that was the first big learning for me, was like, oh, watch out, these people actually exist. And that was where my journey of trying to educate myself as well around what are the typical traits of these people. Because when I then started reading about it, I was like, oh yeah, this fits perfectly so to what I have experienced. So that was the first big learning. I think the other big learning was that I was really a type of, I think I, to a large extent, have been like a people pleaser, more the empathic type. And I always kind of think of it as a continuum, you know, you have the extreme empath and you have the extreme bully or narcissist. Sometimes they use these words as well. And we're all somewhere on this scale. We can all display this type of behavior from time to time, and but we will call it a bully only when it's really consistent over time. So what I felt like I was probably in average more on the empathic side and people-pleasing side, and my boss was maybe more in average on the other side. And then what I felt like I learned, which was the important thing, was that I learned to set stronger boundaries for myself. I became less of an empath, but like that I knew more clearly where the boundaries are, meaning that I felt like I moved myself more towards the middle of that continuum. So now I feel like I don't attract them so much, because I think there's also something that when we're too much on one hand ourselves, we tend to attract those people. They like to exploit the people who they feel they can easily exploit, right? So that was a big learning, definitely. So many things. Also being brave, I mean, was a big thing for me, like really daring to speak up, even though it was really tough. And I'm glad I can look back and know that I tried, even if it was, and even to the point of where I had to let go all my fears of losing my job at the time. I came to a point where it's like, no, this is completely unacceptable. I have to speak up, even if it means that I, lose my job or whatever. And one learning that I had around that was almost like a spiritual thing. It's like I felt like once I went to that point that I had that courage to stand up, I felt like the universe was catching me, and I didn't actually lose my job always, although I almost did. So instead, I was moved somewhere else. So in a way, yes, the bully kind of won. But I think that's also quite classical. When you know a lot about bullies, you know that they very often in corporate life, everybody leaves and the bully is left. And that was really what happened in my case as well. Yeah. At least for a while, she was left. So yeah, so it was working on yourself as well. It's not just the bully, which is the issue. The bully is the issue, but I had to learn things, and I had to transform myself as well in certain areas. Maybe not in the areas that your HR was telling you to change yourself, but like some inner transformation was necessary.
Yeah, that's amazing, because you have touched base on a couple of things that we will also in the later episodes will share with our audience, right? Okay, who are the targets? Like, how do you become a target? Because in the beginning we were targets. I mean, and I moved into victimization, right? Because I suffered from anxiety, then I had a light depression, right? And I got into a treatment. So I don't know how it was with you, but and then later on, it took me up to 7 years to overcome the anxiety. And sometimes still I feel there are situations where I feel, oh my God, there's something going on. Like I should be really careful. So, and then of course, you also touched base on why these bullies bully, right? How they select their targets and why they bully. And this is also something that we will be sharing in our later episodes. Yeah. And of course, the learnings. So in terms of the learnings and growth, did you get a training? Like, did you take a training, or how did you get all this information and all this personal development? How did you master all of that?
I mean, yes, I did. First of all, there was a lot of reading, like reading about this type of personalities and learning their psychology. I was really trying to understand. I'm somebody who always tried to understand, because I felt in my case as well that, and we'll probably get into this later in the podcast, but like, how you can look beyond their behavior. And I could see that this person also had the drama, that they were not in a way that psychologically healthy maybe as well. So that helped me already while it was going on to kind of a little bit let go. And forgive is a big word in this situation, but I really believe in forgiveness more in the way of being able to let go. It's an act of self-love. It's an act of not trying not to carry too much of that anger ourselves, right? Because the only one who suffers if we do is us. So I already, while it was going on, I managed to, because I'm interested in like deeper psychology, and I was lucky it didn't go on long enough, and I had some support internally. I think the biggest support for me was the team. We were like our own little therapy group because we all could share and we had similar experiences. So without that, I mean, I probably might have gone on a burnout as well. I don't know. I also had some support from other people in the organization, but the problem was rather that it wasn't being dealt with, because my boss was also known to be somebody who had conflict with everybody. So it wasn't that they just believed her and not me, but so I didn't get sick like you. What happened to me was that once I was out of the situation, I was on and off for 6 months, probably having a flu, a cold, you know, a cough, or like, so it did take a toll on my body as well. But that only came out once I was out of the situation, and it was more the psychological stress when it happened, and I managed somehow to handle it. But then afterwards, it was really about, I wanted to understand what had happened, and I also was in the process already then of doing further training as a coach. So of course there I learned a lot of things which were helpful for me also personally, and finding out what I needed to do myself, or like how I needed to work on myself. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah. Oh, actually, yeah. I mean, in my case, it was really a terrible experience. And then, of course, it transformed. I could use that experience and transform it into something much better. And, you know, just to share, at that time, I had 2 small kids, you know, and I had a long drive, 1.5 hour drive to work. And can you imagine that I was walking? So my body, my soul didn't want to go to work. Although I had a job that I loved, I had a team that I loved to, you know, to lead and to work with. And I didn't have anyone who were taking care of me at work, because as soon as they knew what's going happening, everyone turned their back. Because in my case, my manager was very, as we know, the narcissistic personalities are very shiny, and they can manage so well to the upper management. And he was very welcome, tolerated, very much liked. So, and when I shared this, like what's going on with me, between me and him, everyone was like, are we talking about the same person? Are you sure that he's doing that? It's like, yes, yeah, this is what is happening. And then one after the other, they turned their back, right? They didn't want to talk about this topic because they didn't want to run into troubles with him.
Yeah.
So I felt very isolated, and every morning I was really on the way to work, I was crying in the car. I was in tears, and then the moment I stopped my car in the parking, I swiped my tears, walked into the office with a big smile, and then worked with this big smile, and then on the way back cried, and then as soon as I was at home, I put the smile back on my face, and I had to function as a mother, right? So and therefore it was really a tough time and challenging time. And you carried all this disappointment. I was asking myself, why is this happening to me? Why to me? And why is it happening in this way? And of course, when this happened to me the second time, because I in the end I decided to quit the job. I changed the company, I changed the manager, I changed the job, but the situation was the same, right? A different manager, different company, different job, but the situation was the same. So I started to ask myself, what is wrong with me that this is happening to me the second time? So, and I'm sure this is a question that we always ask ourselves, what is wrong with me, especially we women, right? How can I improve? What else could I have done that this couldn't happen or didn't happen? So because of that, to really get an answer to that question, I started studying psychology, because I wanted to investigate, who am I and why am I actually attracting those bullies? You know, why are they selecting me as a target? And why do I move into victimization? Of course, I considered myself as a very strong woman, very strong personality, crystal clear communication, direct, you know, I'm very extroverted, smiling, etc. But still, it happened to me and it had a negative impact on me. So, and, you know, as you know, when you study psychology, then you start, you know, seeing yourself as a big puzzle, and then you take every pieces. What is your, you know, family, culture, education, mother, father, sisters, whatever, or siblings, etc. And then you put the pieces back together. And then in the end, there was a completely different picture. So with every piece, I could really work on myself, as you did, right? Really work on my needs, like the boundaries, right? I was also a people pleaser. I was too nice, too helpful. Okay, I'm still too nice, too helpful, but I know actually I have my borders. Like every country has a border, and if you want to travel to a country, you need a passport, you need a visa. So if some people want to interact with me, they have to get a visa from me or an approval, whatever, you know. Not everyone just walk into the, you know, my country or my limits, right? I put my limits, I put my borders. I started to say no, or even I started to say, this is something that I'm not tolerating. This behavior is not tolerated by me. You're not going to do that again, right? Or you're not going to say that again to me. I'm not tolerating that, or I'm not accepting that. Before, I would have never said that, right? Yeah. And with that, the transformation started. And the more I could transform in a better way, in a better self, the less I was attracted for these people, right? Still, I mean, still people tried. Also, some of my female leaders tried, but I could from the beginning say, look, this is a behavior that is not professional. I'm not accepting that, tolerating it. Please do it differently or say it differently. And with that, they saw actually there is a stronger personality. So, and also the power, the meaning of the power has changed for me. Because before, as also you said, you know, there's a hierarchy between the manager and the person that the manager is leading. So for me, that barrier has kind of was gone, like, because there is the power doesn't mean that I need to be at the same hierarchical level. The power is in me, right? I'm very powerful, and this power I can use very actively to protect myself. These were the key learnings for me. And it has really helped me a lot, because and this is also how I started, like you also, you know, designing trainings, helping others to understand the situation, to move out of the situation. And you touched base on the forgiveness, you know. And now when I think back, I think it was one of the best things that had happened to me. It was painful, but I could grow out. I could become bigger, you know, from inside out. And these people, they have actually helped me. You know, I'm really thankful to them.
Yes.
I'm really thankful to them that they did that to me, because otherwise I wouldn't have grown that much. I don't know what you think of.
Oh, absolutely. I fully, it's exactly the same thing with me. I mean, I feel like I would be nowhere near where I am now if I hadn't had this experience. So yeah, absolutely. I'm, although it was the worst maybe experienced in my life, it was also one of the most valuable. And yeah, that is, I don't know if somebody's listening to this and they're maybe in the middle of it where it's only painful. Maybe that can give them a little bit of hope as well. I think to go on and yeah, deal with the situation.
We know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Right. And I mean, we are here to listen to them, to help, to provide help, whatever that help means for them, or in what form. And so, but before we close, so we are going to share with our listeners the Sam Horn's bully quiz, right? You want probably...
Yes, that is something I discovered only quite recently, but I thought it was such a great tool, because what I feel like people don't even know how to recognize these people. So that's why in the article that you read, one of the first things I put were like, here are some typical bullet points, like how you can recognize them. And every time I put up that slide, if I do like a presentation or something, many people go like, oh yeah, actually, I think I know somebody like that, but they had never really, they just realized that it was problematic with this person, but they couldn't really maybe put their finger on it. So it's so important to know what are the typical signs. So anybody who think they might be in such a situation but are not really sure, I think a great place to start is this so-called bully quiz of Sam Horn. We'll put up the link below this video, maybe also on the video, and so that you can, it's online. She has also written a very good book about, which is called Take the Bullies by the Horn, which has a lot of great tips as well on how to deal with these people. And she was quite interesting because she told her story. She was an expert on communication, like best practice communication techniques. And then she was exposed to such a person and she realized that none of these techniques really worked that well with such a person. So she has written this book to also enlighten people on how to deal with these type of people, because they're not reasonable in the same way as most other people. So yeah, we'll definitely share the link about there, and there you can do, in this quiz, you can answer some questions, and you can, based on your score, you'll find out if the person you're dealing with is really a full-fledged bully, or if it's just maybe somebody who's not that bad.
Yeah. So and I think, I mean, yes, if even though these both experiences we had were painful, I think it was, at least, I mean, when I can speak for me, it was a very good opportunity for me to look at myself with different lenses, right? To really try to understand who I am, who I want to become. And it was like it was a painful journey, but at the end of the journey, and I think that the journey is still going on, right? With every experience we are making, or every person that we are meeting and listening, sharing their experiences, we are still learning. At least I am. I'm still learning, and I think this is something that we can also share with our audience, to say, if this is happening to you, right, that this is probably the time to reflect and think, okay, how can I use the situation and make best out of it and learn from it? What do you think?
Absolutely. And also, I mean, as you say, we're still learning, and I'm going deeper and deeper into things and trying to understand the bigger picture behind this as well. Because I think what we also realized is that actually in our society today, this type of behavior is sometimes even almost encouraged, and especially in what we define as leadership qualities. Often these qualities are being considered leadership qualities that narcissistic or people have, and that is quite problematic. And I think the problem, at least based on my research that I'm doing, I think the problem is much bigger than we think, especially in hierarchical organizations, which are most corporate organizations today still. And that's why it's important to address it. And I don't know why there is so little, so little literature or so little knowledge about it in general. It's so that's what we're trying here to change. And I mean, having gone through this ourselves, that's also been the best preparation to help other people who are in the same situation. So
yeah,
we look forward to also having, as we said in the beginning, other people coming and sharing their experiences from all sides, but being the victim, maybe also being a bystander is also important. Having observed it, maybe at some point, if there are some recovered bullies out there, we could even have them on,
That would be great. Yes, I think this is our call also to our audience, to anyone that is listening to us, because in our future podcast, we will look at different aspects of bullying, right? Why one is being bullied and what are the actual motives of the bullies, why is that happening, and why is that tolerated within the corporate culture, right? And as you said, it's going really everywhere, right? And also, for example, at school, bullying at school, there is a terminology, bullying at school, right? And there are preventive methods that are implemented. There is cyberbullying that has found its space in our daily life, right? Also, there are some preventive methods against cyberbullying and some rules and law, right? But when it comes to workplace bullying that is happening at work, the law everywhere, right, in all countries, is still not as strong as it should be.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and this is also something that we can also invite, people from the corporate life, HR people, to come and join us and share their perspective.
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
they're experiencing it, what strategies and policies they have implemented within their corporate environment to protect their employees from being bullied.
Yeah. No, that I think that's why we want to call this Shine a Light on Workplace Bullying. We want to shine this light on this topic from all possible angles and continue to learn together, because we know a lot, but we're also still learning, and it's a journey. And I definitely think it's something which would make work a better place. Is something that we're both very passionate about, because we have experienced it not being always such a good place. So yeah, looking forward to what we are going to discover together in this podcast, and also together with our listeners. And that is, we really invite you to come and share your input and experiences.
And exactly, and I think one of our common goals is also not to finger point to the bullies, right? I mean, because they have also their motives. And you mentioned earlier that this person might have also some traumas, past traumas, negative experience. So they have also their reasons. But we are also here to help them to understand what's going on inside, right? And how they can also understand what's going on. And most of the times, eventually, they are not aware of it.
Yeah.
And how can they transform themselves as well? So it should be a win-win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think we are at the end of our first episode.
Yes.
That's great. So there will be more to come, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And how they can find us if someone wants to reach out to us.
Yes, I think you said, did you want to share your email address for that, or?
Yes.
Mm.
So I can share info@womenonstage.ch, or they can find us on LinkedIn, right? We are both very active on LinkedIn. And they can reach out to us if they want to share their stories with their names or without their names, anonymously, if they want to be on our podcast. So we are really open for everyone and really looking forward to get some insights and feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So thanks
Great.
a lot. Yeah, take care.
You.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So